one and all, I'm Alexis, aka The Soft Reader, and I'm here today to do my fall recommendations video. This is obviously an incredibly popular video going around on BookTube right now, so I figured, sure, let's do it. I want to start off by apologizing that there was no video on Wednesday. I was feeling super sick. I literally had to drag myself out of bed to go to work. It was not a good day. And I usually pre-film all my videos, but I didn't get to pre-film because I had family in town over the weekend, so yeah, no video for Monday, so I apologize for that. As for my fall recommendations go, I want to kind of explain my thought process for books that I think are good during fall. I kind of agree with a lot of people on BookTube that I think fall is a good time for dark or spooky or atmospheric or thriller type books, just because obviously we have Halloween dead smack in the middle of fall. But I also think fall is a lot about death and rebirth, obviously, as we're getting the trees changing colors to prepare for the rebirth of spring. So I kind of just went with that idea and picked books that I felt like fit into that. Also, I'm pretty sure I read all of these books but one maybe actually in fall, so maybe that's why I think of them as being fall books. I don't know. Let's get into it. The first one I'm going to recommend is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This is actually a historical fiction novel that follows two sisters in Nazi-occupied France during World War II, as they both kind of are part of different resistance within France during that time period. I think this book is really, really good for fall because it does deal with some pretty heavy topics. Obviously, it takes place in World War II, Nazi-occupied France. I also think historical fiction just very much fits the fall mood for me. And this is a historical fiction novel I highly, highly recommend because of how much I really enjoyed it. So yes, I will recommend that one. The next one I'm going to mention is actually a classic, and that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This, of course, is one of my favorite classics. I feel like this fits the Halloween season so perfectly because it's a lot, obviously. It has a monster creature in it. But this book is also about how terrifying humanity can be, and how scary knowledge can be. So it has a lot of different elements that it works with that make it on that spooky level. A good read for this time of year. If you haven't picked up Frankenstein yet, now's the perfect time to do it. The next one I'm going to mention is Shallow Graves by Callie Wallace. You guys know this is one of my favorite books of last year. This follows our main character Breezy, who wakes up and crawls out of a grave, and she basically has no idea what has happened to her, how she ended up in that grave, and how she is climbing out of it a year later. So she basically goes on a trip across the country to figure out what is going on with her. And so yes, so it's about our main character Breezy, and I love this book. This book has so many awesome diversity elements, and it also has so many important things to say in this book. But I also just think it has kind of a groovy road trip vibe, right? You're following this girl, she's searching across the country trying to figure out what in God's name happened to her. She should be dead, and she's not. And there are a lot of other little spooky elements that come into play, and I love this book. I read it for the Spookathon last year. I think it's a perfect read for this time of year, and I highly, highly recommend it. The next one I'm going to mention, honestly, it's this author as a whole, but everyone else was recommending Three Dark Crowns, so I did want to also recommend it. So instead, I'm going to be recommending Kendar Blake's Anna Dressed in Blood. And this follows our main character, Cass, who basically travels across the country hunting down ghosts. So a pretty good read for all of you supernatural fans out there, and he comes across this one town, and in it there is a ghost named Anna Dressed in Blood, who basically has a white dress, and she kills any person who comes into the house that she haunts. And right away, Cass knows that there's something different about Anna, and so he basically tries to figure out what exactly is going on. And yeah, this book is dark. This book has a lot to do with ghosts and demons and other spooky elements like that. And again, a lot of people say this book is perfect for fans of supernatural. I would have to agree. And it's perfect for this season. I actually also read this for Spookathon last year, and yeah, I just highly recommend it for the spooky season. The next one I want to mention is The Darkest Corners by Kara Thomas. This is a YA thriller that follows our main character. The next one I'm going to mention is The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. This is a sci-fi book that is about our main character Todd, who lives in a world where there are no women. and people are able to hear each other's thoughts. And one day, while Todd is on his path to become a man in this society, he actually discovers a young girl, and he is discovering that the world is not quite what he was always told it was. And this book is dark. There is a lot of dark elements and dark themes to this book, and all of the characters are bad in a way. You know, the main character Todd especially deals a lot with what it means to be good versus what it means to be bad, and how he finds he fits on that spectrum. And yes, like, for that reason I think it's dark enough to definitely fit into the fall season. The next one I'm going to mention is Tithe by Holly Black. This is the first one in her Fae series. I don't really know what the actual series is called. This follows our main character Kay, who travels around the country with her mother's rock band until one day in her childhood town she actually gets roped into this struggle between good fairies and bad fairies, and it's basically about the role she plays in this growing conflict. And Holly Black is known for dark whimsical stuff and very much fits Tithe. It's not spooky, I wouldn't call it that, but it is dark. This series very much reflects Holly Black's iconic style, and honestly I would recommend anything by Holly Black for the season. I think she fits the spooky Halloween season perfectly, and yes, I love this series a lot. I haven't read it in years, but I do highly recommend it. The next one I'm going to mention is The Forest of Hands and Teeth by Carrie Ryan. This is a trilogy that actually is a companion trilogy, so each book follows a main character, and they all build off of the previous book before them, but the first book in the series, The Forest of Hands and Teeth, follows our main character Mary. She lives in a town in a forest that is completely surrounded by gates to keep out the unconsecrated, which is basically this world's version of zombies. And Mary soon discovers that, like I've said for a lot of these, that the world within these gates is not as it seems, and that there's a lot more going on that she has no clue about. And so obviously I said this book deals with zombies. It's a post-zombie apocalypse type story. I feel like in what makes a good zombie fiction is when it deals a lot with zombies, but also humanity and what makes humans humans, and looking at the dark side of humanity, and I very much think that this series as a whole does that. Especially as the books go on, I think they get darker in tone. But I highly recommend the series. I love this series a lot. I actually might give the series a reread come this Halloween if I can fit it into my schedule, but yes, highly recommend these books. They're so good. So good. Alright guys, so those are my fall recommendations. I feel like most of those were spooky recommendations, so maybe I should call this my Halloween recommendations, because I feel like that's what most of them are. But I can't help it, that's very much the kind of books I like to read once fall gets started. I save up all of my spooky/thriller books for this season so I can read them. So yes, if you've read any of these books and you want to talk to me about them, or if you're interested in checking any of these books out, I'd love to know, and I'll see you guys soon with another video. Bye!